Welcome back friends, EDDBUD here. Think Santa Barbara surf spirit mixed with highly cushioned trainer. What'd you get? The Hoka One One Rincon. Certainly a more budget price. This light and cushioned shoe passed me by up until now, but the viewers asked for a review, so here it comes. A neutral shoe, certainly more of a responsive type midsole feel. So we've got a mesh upper, quite breathable. Certainly on my initial run I felt as if it wasn't going to be too much of a warm shoe in use. It's very lightweight, I can't stress that enough. When I first put the shoe on, even though you've got this massive foam under here, I kind of picked it up out of the box and looked at it and said, wow, that's a lot of foam. It does feel like a lot of foam in hand, but it doesn't really feel that way underfoot. I think that massive foam here, the grey foam on the midsole, is very reminiscent of some of the pictures I've seen of that Santa Barbara surf spot. It looks like the cobblestone rocks around the beach. On closer inspection though, the foam actually cups the rear part of the heel and isn't quite as thick underfoot as the external appearance would suggest. Simple and to the point upper really. The mesh doesn't feature any overlays of any sort. There's very few frills here really, but I do think aesthetically this is a great looking shoe. It's certainly got that surf style aesthetic. It's kind of rock and roll. It's got the waves of the beach here on the medial side. It's got more waves. It's got the seagulls. It's the seagulls, they're there. You hear them. It's got seagulls here. It's got the big pull tab. It's huge, in fact, that pull tab. Can you see that? Do we really need a pull tab that big? Yes, we do. And then there's more waves coming over the cobblestones. More waves over the soft pebbles. It's like I'm on the beach right now. I really like the red. Actually, it's Barbados cherry. Yeah, look for that one in your local hardware store. You won't find paint of that colour. I think the colourway and the aesthetics look flash. They look pleasing. But most importantly, how does it fare on the mean streets of Yeovil? So I took this out for an initial run. Ran about 7 miles. I was kind of aiming for about 7 minutes 30 per mile, but lots of reasons why I didn't quite reach that. Got up to about 7 minutes 40 per mile in the Hoka One One Rincons. Amazingly still, the average heart rate was about 145 beats per minute. I'm quite amazed really about that. I've never really thought that my heart rate was that kind of efficient. It was staying that low at that kind of pace, so I'm really quite pleased with those results. Certainly as I pushed the pace up towards the end of the run, the heart rate started to increase a little bit, but the average overall for the 7 miles was around 145, so it's kind of odd. There's been lots of other reviews of this shoe, so I'm going to kind of really cut to the chase really on some of the observations I've made about it. Certainly the tongue seems to be a bit of a sticking point for some people. I didn't really find it to be a problem. I think it's about the right height. It doesn't influence your ankle area too much. It's pretty much spot on for me. It's cushioned enough. I really do like the laces in these as well. They've got a certain amount of spring to them, but I didn't find it difficult to get a good lockdown. My initial impressions of this shoe, certainly very positive. I really do like this hollowed out midsole area here. It really does feel like an incredibly light shoe. It hardly feels as if there's anything there on foot. I'll throw out some stats about the weight and stuff for you and do some conversions as well, so you get an idea of just how light this shoe really is. This is one of those shoes where the midsole and the outsole really become one. There are some kind of rubber sections here on the outsole. I found traction to be pretty good. Things have dried out a little bit here for the last day or so, so it wasn't too much water around. It was mainly dry roads, pavements, and some very light trail areas that I took the shoe out on for my initial run. I believe this is an EVA style midsole. It certainly feels cushioned enough, felt very responsive to me. It's certainly advertised as a road shoe, but I know some local runners have picked this one up already and have been using it on some less technical trails with compacted dirt kind of paths, some woodland areas, and I know they've not encountered any issues at all. I certainly didn't today. I felt very sure-footed in the Rincons. That midsole and outsole's kind of surface area here is considerable. It is sizable and nice and wide. It certainly left me feeling very sure-footed in the same way really as I felt in the Carbon X. It's certainly reminiscent of that shoe. Very light upper, similar stylings, obviously without that carbon plate. Very similar feeling in the Rincons to the Carbon X. I'd suggest there's a little bit more responsiveness of the surface under your feet though. I think perhaps the carbon plate takes away some of that responsiveness. You do feel a little bit more connected with the surface you're running on in the Rincons. One big issue that I have noticed with many reviews of this shoe is wear over time. That outsole does seem to show lots of wear very quickly. Even after sort of 100, 150 miles, people are finding that the rubber sections here are starting to wear, and even parts of the exposed foam are starting to wear. I'm quite a slight fella really. I don't weigh a huge amount. I think I'm about 11 stone, 11 and a half stone possibly. I haven't weighed myself in a while. I think I'm around about that, and I tend to find that shoes don't wear as quickly for me as perhaps some other slightly heavier runners. So it really remains to be seen as to whether I find that to be a problem. On foot, the shoe feels light and nimble. I had absolutely no problems with getting an appropriate lockdown in the shoe. Certainly, as I said, the laces feel good. There's some stretch to them, and I found it very easy actually to achieve a slightly wider feel down here in the toe box. Just by some lacing adjustment, things stayed pretty much where they were over the initial run. Though I do understand why some people find this to be quite a narrow shoe. I switched up socks into the thinner Nike socks today, but found there was enough room for me to wear the Stance socks. A little bit thicker, it's a little bit cooler now, so it was nice to wear those slightly thinner, higher socks with the Rincons. I didn't feel it was particularly restrictive. Again, if you've worn the Carbon X, you'll find a similar fit in terms of the narrow nature of the shoe. It's not for everybody. I think most people will get on with it. If you've got a particularly wide foot, you could have a problem. It's certainly more narrow than the Pegasus 36 Shields that I've been recently running in, and I would suggest that the on-foot feel in terms of comfort is nowhere near as plush as the Asics Glide Ride. I think the New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel is kind of close to this shoe in terms of fit and feel, though I think that the Rincon is a far more complete feeling shoe than that of the Fuel Cell Rebel. It kind of feels like a prototype really, that Fuel Cell Rebel to me. I think they'll perhaps really nail it on the second iteration. This one certainly feels like a more complete shoe. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my initial runs and tests in the Fuel Cell Rebel. Though struggled with sizing, as you probably know if you've watched my review, and opted to remove the insoles of that one to get the correct feel. Certainly to me, on my initial run, this feels like a more everyday style trainer. It's capable of higher paces. I did push the pace a little bit more in some of the miles on my initial run, but I think you could also use it to grind out those miles in those long runs at lower paces. I think it's perhaps a more versatile shoe than the Fuel Cell Rebel, and with that greater outsole surface area adding to the overall stability, making this one a bit more of an all-rounder. Something to note here is the non-removable insole. If you're somebody that likes to switch those out to kind of achieve the right fit and feel and kind of change the performance of your shoes, then that could be a problem. Obviously they're just stuck down with some adhesive, so if you really wanted to remove them you could, but it's just something to really bear in mind. And it's not something you see all the time these days. Most of the time manufacturers enable us to remove those if we want to. One thing to note, the eyelets are quite kind of rudimentary really. They're quite crude in terms of how they've been added in. They remind me a little bit of the New Balance beacons actually. I know some people had some issues with the beacons, the laces kind of cutting into the area where the eyelets are, and eventually those eyelets started to sort of break and widen and cause some problems. There is some kind of material placed around the eyelets to provide some reinforcement. I'm not saying that will be a problem here, but perhaps in the future it could start to be an issue. Around the ankle area, the last three eyelets here have more of that reinforcing material. To provide lockdown around the forefoot, there are some kind of white pieces inserted. Those inner strips go between the midsole right up to where the eyelets are. It's almost kind of like bracing, I guess, that you get within perhaps an acoustic guitar or something like that, to provide some additional structure and strength to that mesh. I didn't experience any heel slippage at all in my initial run in the Hoka One One Rincon. No major discomfort, rubbing, anything like that. Certainly a very comfortable initial run. I think these are very justifiable price really, at around about £100. I think these can hold their own against some of the more extravagant competition that currently exists. And I think from that perspective, and them being an all-rounder, I think I can endorse these now. Will they hold up over time? I'm not sure how wear is going to affect that, but It's only a very promising initial run. I think this is a shoe that I can really torture test against a number of other shoes that I currently have. That includes the Asics Glide Ride, the New Balance Fuel Cell Rebels, and the Pegasus 36. They all kind of come in around about the same price, give or take maybe 15–20 pounds. So look out for a video soon. I'm going to put these through their paces up against some of those other similarly priced shoes. I'd suggest going true to size if you're thinking about the Hoka One One Rincon. That aside, I think you do need to test it in a bricks and mortar store, or if you can purchase it and the company you've purchased it from has a good returns policy. I think with any shoe you've got to try to do that. We're all different, all our feet are different. Sometimes our feet can be different between left and right, but I think it's really important to test a shoe out. Some people have reported this to be narrow. It is a little narrow. I haven't had a problem with it, but then again I have very narrow feet. So do test it out beforehand if you can. If you've worn or are thinking of acquiring the Hoka One One Rincon, please chime in with your experiences or your questions below. I'm always keen to read your comments and try to reply to as many of them as I can. Hope you've enjoyed my initial review today. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't done already, and please give the video a like. Remember to share the video with any runners or friends you may have. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you.